Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for July 26, 2022, the Extradition edition. And we begin with that story from U.S. News and World Reports, how South Africa has asked the UAE to extradite the Guptas over corruption charges. The formal request to extradite Rajesh and Atul Gupta, 2 brothers who face corruption charges relating to the former president, Jacob Zuma, has been made to the central authority. South Africa had 60 days to submit the request after the Dubai police arrested the Guptas in June. The brothers are accused of using their connections with Zuma in state capture. So it's going to be interesting to see what the officials in the UAE and specifically Dubai will do. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Dylan Tokar reporting that banks are starting using information sharing tools to detect financial crimes. Banks have long struggled to spot illicit transactions among multitudes they process because criminals move dirty money from one institution to another. That has started to change with financial institutions and service providers in several countries creating information sharing platforms and messaging tools with the potential to vastly improve the detection of money laundering and fraud between institutions. A research project initiated in the UK identified at least 15 information sharing initiatives around the world. So it's going to be interesting to see if this will help banks. We have been following the WWE and its now former chairman, Vince McMahon, as stories of his profligation and sexual harassment and settlements of sexual harassment claims have percolated up over the past couple of weeks. Well, now it turns out the WWE is going to restate some of its financial results after finding unrecorded expenses made by the former chief executive. Expenses totaled $14.6 million and were made from 2006 forward. The company said it would revise financial statements for years ending 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. When you think about the impact of this, recall that to restate financial earnings, there has to be a material aspect. So must have been some pretty expensive charges. And finally, this event happened a couple of days ago, but we didn't report it, and a DOJ press release that 3 men were charged in an Ecuadorian bribery and money laundering scheme. A grand jury in South Florida indicted the 3 men for their roles in a bribery and money laundering scheme to obtain business from Ecuadorian state-owned enterprises and insurance companies. So looks like some more FCPA work coming. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.